In this lesson, we're going to look at a few tools in Visual Studio which will help you build better web pages without having to know HTML5, CSS3, and other front-end user interface technologies. Now, having said that, this is not a long-term solution for you. You must learn HTML5 and CSS3 and other web-related technologies if you're going to be a web developer. So I'm really just showing you these tools because, first of all, for the sake of completeness, so you can be exposed to all the features of Visual Studio. And then secondly, so that we can add a little bit of design up front while we go through the remainder of this series where we don't want to talk about HTML or ASP.NET. All right? So you're going to hear me use this statement a number of times. It'll become a recurring theme. Visual Studio has lots of great menus and windows and toolbar options and wizards and things of that nature. Many of them will generate code for you or will seem like a shortcut for you. Once you learn those shortcuts, make sure that you forget about them immediately, okay? Only use them while you're learning, and then I want you to vacate them completely once you learn how to do things the right way, okay? So once we learn HTML5 and CSS3, you're going to find that you'll have a greater fidelity of control over the output of your web pages whenever you work directly in the source view as opposed to the design view that we've been working in the previous lessons. We're not there now. I don't want to go there now, but I want you to at least understand at some point what the tools are really doing for you, what are they generating, and then you'll be better equipped to use them correctly or use them when they make sense, as opposed to only using them because you don't know anything else. All right, that's bad. Let's go ahead and create a new project. I'm going to start with a new naming convention for projects. This time what I want to do is change the name of the project to CS-006, which is the name of this lesson, the little code that I use for this lesson. We're going to follow that convention from here on out. And then I'm going to click OK. Now make sure you have this web template, this ASP.NET web application template selected. Drill down in the templates if you have to over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to click the OK button. We're going to select Empty Web Forms. OK. I'm going to show you a new way to add a default.aspx page, a web form page to your project. With the project selected in the Solution Explorer, I'm going to go to the Project menu and select Add New Item. And now that opens up the Add New Item dialog, and here's a list of all of the types of files that you can add to your project. And we'll cover some of these throughout the upcoming series. Won't really talk about them much in this series, but we're going to select web form and then change the name from its default, which is web form 1, to default.aspx, and we'll click the add button on that dialog and it will pop open default.aspx. Immediately we're going to pop over to the design view, and our blinking text cursor is inside of that body area that is denoted by those double dashed or dotted lines. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is talk about how to apply HTML tags to to the text inside of your web page. Now I said we don't want you to learn those tags, but a couple of tags will be helpful. For example, if you need to create a header, so let's go headline 1, and then I'll create another headline 2 and a headline 3, and so on. Let's kind of clean that up, and a headline 4 and a headline 5 and a headline 6. Okay. So what you can do is select the text here and then go over here to the format, and currently it's selected as a paragraph, but we'll choose the heading 1, which you can see that by default it puts it in very large letters. I'm going to select the next text in headline 2, change that to the H2, the heading 2 tag, Here I'm going to select another. And so you can see that these headings should be used kind of to divvy up a given web page and make their sections distinctive, sort of like a textbook where you have an outline, and as you go deeper into the outline, into the details, the headlines get smaller. All right, and so we'll go ahead and choose heading 6, or heading 5, and then finally heading 6. All right, and so those again should be used for that purpose, for creating headlines. Okay, next up, what I want to do is I want to style up some text. So this is some text that I want to apply a style to. And there's a number of different ways that we can style up this text. What I want you to do is go to the right of this toolbar that should be visible by default, the formatting toolbar, and we want to go to the formatting toolbar options with that little down arrow off to the right hand side. And it has a menu option called Add or Remove Buttons, and you can see that automatically a context menu kind of pops up whenever we hover over it. And here are some options that are not selected for us on that toolbar that I'm going to add. I want to be able to change the font name. I'm also going to show you how to add a bulleted and numbered list. And we'll just skip that last one about generating local resources. That's all we need. But you can see that it added several more options here to our toolbar. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is select this text, and I'm going to change the font. And I'm going to select Arial Helvetica Sans Serif like so, and you can see it changed the style of that font. I can also select some text, and I can change its color by selecting the foreground color option and then choosing, a color to apply, like so. And it's hard to see because the background is a light blue and the foreground is a dark blue. Let me change that color. So I select that word again, and this time I'm going to choose a bright red color so it stands out nicely. All right, and so we can see how there's a color dialog that helps us to choose colors. And if we have a specific color that we want to use, we can either use the select and just hover around on our desktop until we find just the right color, or we can choose the custom colors and actually type in the RGB values, the red, green, blue, and add them as custom colors so that we can reuse them over and over again in our application. Okay. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to add a hyperlink, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. This is another hyperlink. All right, so I'm going to create 2 hyperlinks here. The first way is just to select the text and then to use this button over here on the right hand side to convert to hyperlink. And this will open up a dialog that we can choose either HTTP or HTTPS, or a number of different protocol options like FTP or FTPS, Gopher, Mail2 to pop open the email client, and so on. All right, so I'm just going to choose HTTP. Now I'm going to type in a URL, or I can browse and locate a page that's already in this project. That's pretty cool. We only have one page, so that doesn't really apply here. I'll click the OK button, and now we have a hyperlink. Great. There's another way, and let me go ahead and delete this and use the toolbox instead. And the only reason why you would want to use the server control for the hyperlink is if you wanted to programmatically change the destination, the target, at runtime. But we're going to go ahead and use it anyway here. So I'm going to double click, and it inserts a hyperlink server control. Let's go ahead and change some of the properties about that hyperlink control. This is another hyperlink, like so. Hit enter. You can see the text changed. Now we need to change at the very bottom, the navigation. Here we would choose the navigation URL. Again, we can click the ellipsis to choose a URL from this project, or we can type in some other URL like so. And we can also choose the target, and the target will be whether that web page pops open in another tab or a whole other, like a whole other browser window, or if we should just open it up in the current browser window or browser tab. Okay, so here you can experiment with these, but these are our standard HTML options for an anchor tag, or otherwise known as a hyperlink. So if we were to choose blank, I believe that's going to pop open another tab for us. We could test that out, but that's neither here nor there. You can try that on your own. The next thing I want to do is insert an image, and probably the easiest way to insert an image is to just double-click the server control from the toolbox. And if you're already familiar with ASP.NET, you might be saying, Bob, you're driving me crazy. Why don't you use these HTML controls down here at the bottom? Because I don't want to explain it just yet. I'm going to go ahead and use just normal server controls. We'll talk about the HTML controls some other day. Okay? So now that I've added an image, let's make a little room for it here, an image control to my web page, I'm going to need to set the image URL. I happen to have an image that I want to use in my project. Now there's a couple of different ways that I can add this to my project. Frankly, the easiest is to either use Windows Explorer, or if you have the assets here on your desktop, is just to drag and drop them onto the project entry inside the Solution Explorer, and now you can see that that file is in my Solution Explorer, part of my project, and you can see that as I hover over it, it'll give me a little preview of what that image looks like. All right, now with the image control selected, I'm going to choose which image I want to use, and I click the ellipsis button to choose an image from my project. In this case, the bobtabor.jpg, and you can see that it automatically puts it there. Great. All right, next up I want to insert a table, and a table is used for tabular information. It's important for me to tell you that you should never use a table to format your web pages. That's a big no-no, and people will hiss at you on the streets. Children will point and laugh at you. Okay, if you don't know what that means, then no big deal. But if you ever try to use a table to make sure everything lines up nicely in columns and rows, resist that urge. Tables are only to be used for tabular style data, like statistics on the back of a baseball card, okay, or soccer, statistics from the night before, okay, those sorts of things. All right, so let's go ahead to the table menu and select Insert Table, and there's this nice Insert Table dialog that pops up, and you can choose the number of rows. Let's put 3 rows, and the number of columns, 3 columns. And there's some other options here with regard to layout and the borders and the background colors, and you can experiment with all of these on your own time. They do what they sound like they will do. I think the only thing that I would kind of point out to you is that the cell padding is the amount of space kind of inside of the cell, whereas the cell spacing is the space between each cell. All right, there's a subtle difference there, but that's what these two items, what the difference is between them. And here's another handy little option to set this as the default. Whatever your options or your choices are here, to set that as the option for new tables whenever you come back to this dialog. That's a neat little shortcut. So okay, we'll click OK, and now you can see that we have a series of rows and columns. All right, and notice the little TD. That's a table cell, essentially, in HTML, and so I can say player, go to the next one, year, and home runs, and so we'll go Sammy Sosa, 19, what was it, like, or 2000, and I don't even know the date, 2005 maybe, and he hit probably 100 home runs that year, and then Mark McGuire hit like 102 home runs or something crazy, right, in 2005. But that's the style of data that you would put into a table, tabular style statistics. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is move actually outside of that area and make a little more space for myself. And then what I want to do is make ordered lists and unordered lists. And the difference is how they're represented by default in HTML. So let's do first item, second item, third item, all right, I'm going to use my mouse. Actually, let me make a little space below it, and then select each of these items, and then I'm going to come over here to my numbering icon on my toolbar, and that creates an ordered list. They must be in this specific order, and you can see they're ordered 1, 2, 3. An unordered list is, this is an idea, this is an equally good idea, yet one more idea to consider. Here we don't have any order to these things. They're all equal. And so we would use this bullets option here on the left. And you can see it creates an unordered list. All right. Now with this selected here, what I can do is any of these like chunks, any of these items, we can style them up just like we did before with fonts and with colors. We can apply a background color. We haven't seen that yet. So I'm going to apply this this yellow color, light yellow, and click OK. And so you can kind of create that highlighted background effect for a given item on screen. Okay. All right. Now, I think it's also interesting at this point, while I've said I don't want to focus on HTML, let's go ahead and just use this option in the middle, the split. And here you can see the HTML on the top that was generated automatically for us by the options that we chose from the menu bar and from the toolbox. And you can see how they correspond to the items that we added to our project. And you can take some time to investigate and look at this, what was actually generated for us. But just know that every action that we took in Visual Studio generated HTML behind the scenes for us. Okay, it's not anything magical once you learn how HTML5 and CSS3 work. It's just using those tools. However, you don't have the control over what's generated like you would if you just worked solely in the source window like so. All right, I felt compelled to point that out. And so again, as we close, I just want to say that you will not get satisfying results from using Visual Studio's dialogues, their the menus here only. You need to learn both HTML5 and CSS3, and probably need to learn some framework like Bootstrap, which is an optional part of the LearnVisualStudio.net curriculum, in order to build aesthetically acceptable user interfaces. Can I recommend, if you really need something that looks awesome, that you not waste the time? It's fun to move pixels around and everything like that, but if you have a deadline, it's not necessary to do everything yourself. Go out, find an HTML template. They're easy to find for sale, $5 or $10. They're quickly becoming a commodity. You can learn what the professional designer did to make their web page look good, and then apply it to your web page, once you learn HTML and CSS. All right. So, at any rate, that's all I really wanted to do, was show you how these tools work in Visual Studio to style up your pages just a little nicer. We'll occasionally use them as we're working through this series of lessons. All right. See you in the next lesson. Thank you.